BBC World Service. This is Neil Rizal with The Inquiry. This week, can we earthquake-proof a city?
Low-tech city.
We can calculate a complete skyscraper in Japan, but we still cannot calculate an earthen hut in India. There's quite a bit of information missing on how a low-tech building behaves in an earthquake.
Architect Martin Schildkamp founded a charity called Smart Shelter to strengthen cheap housing. Do you think it's possible to earthquake-proof a city in the developing world?
If you have a lot of money, yeah, but there's not a strong lobby behind it that can invest and do all that testing, because the investment will never be returned. So for those reasons, there's still a lot of information that is, sort of guesswork. And for me, I said enough is enough. It's 2016. We should be able to find a number of people that can do it now properly.
For him, doing it properly involves two things. One is sharing knowledge. For instance, he's built schools in Nepal using quake-resistant methods.
One important element is a number of horizontal beams that hold the walls together. We call it tying up your building like a present. And this combination of very simple techniques, this is what we train over and over and over again. It's sort of repeating, supervision. But it works. It really works.
Have they actually been tested in an earthquake?
Last year, during the earthquake, our buildings survived without a scratch. They were about 70 kilometers away from the epicenter, so relatively close. In all fairness, we have to say that the region where we are was not as severely hit as, for example, Kathmandu Valley. At the same time, I'm very much convinced that our schools would have done very well in Kathmandu region as well. But yeah, they have been tested.
The second, and perhaps more important thing he's trying to do, is solve a mystery. One you see when you drive through neighborhoods hit by earthquakes.
You see that there's houses collapsed, and they look like they have been built the same. One house is completely collapsed, and the neighbor is still standing strong. So then you really don't understand what is the difference here.
To answer that, he established a research network to find out how to improve the most commonly used materials.
Stone, wood, and bricks, for example, we see them all over the world. So if you can figure out at least those basics, and then with a little bit of tweaking on the local level, I think we can go a long way.
He says to quake-proof a city, we may need to use old materials in new ways.
So for Nepal, for example, I do see the benefit of building with gabion boxes, which is woven nets, steel nets, which we fill with stones.
Right, so these are like cages, metal cages filled with stone.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea is then, rather than stacking them next to a sort of a mountain, they say now, let's stack them into walls, and because then we don't need cement, which is very scarce and expensive there. So we have now 2 students working in Bologna in Italy. They try to figure out if indeed we can make those gabion boxes earthquake resistant.
They're not yet sure this will work. Martin says even if it doesn't, at least they've ruled it out without hurting anyone.
Well, what I see now is that there's a lot of, let's say, experimenting in Nepal, where people are building with sandbags and straw bales and plastic bottles, and then their justification is that it should be quick and cheap. And I absolutely am against that. What I call it experimenting in the backyard of people that basically already lost their house once. It should be done in a safe environment, in a university, where we first figure out exactly how it works before we're going to consider building these with thousands at the same time in villages in Nepal. It just doesn't make sense.
So can we quake-proof a city? Martin Schildkamp says poor countries can do better, though we don't yet know enough about the most basic structures to make them quake-proof.